Hello and welcome to the M.B.O.M podcast, where you'll learn to master the business of yoga. M.B.O.M is a proud part of the Wander Barn podcast network, and I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith. I'm a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, a yoga business coach, and a total business geek. Here at M.B.O.M, you'll learn everything you need to know to create a sustainable yoga business by learning from myself and guests from around the world about how they built their yoga businesses, and about how you too can become a successful yoga teacher, studio owner, and much more. All right, let's dive in. Hey friends, I just wanted to pop in and talk a little bit about M.B.O.M behind the scenes. When I entered the yoga world as a teacher, I was surprised by how many yoga teachers were struggling with the business side of yoga. And that's why I created M.B.O.M. M.B.O.M helps yoga teachers and studio owners become entrepreneurs. It helps you to go from surviving to thriving with your yoga business. I am on a mission to change the yoga industry, to teach yoga teachers and studio owners about the business of yoga, and to help you feel more confident, successful, and abundant. After releasing hundreds of podcast episodes, I want to create content that dives deeper into helping yoga entrepreneurs thrive and elevate their businesses. This is where M.B.O.M Behind the Scenes comes in. Each week, you will get bonus content from the weekly guest or myself, diving deeper into how you can take the teachings and apply them to your business. This podcast is designed for yoga teachers and studio owners who are ready to take it to the next level. If you enjoy M.B.O.M and have been looking for an affordable way to learn more, this is it. For the cost of 2 lattes per month, you will get never-before-heard content that you can't access anywhere else that will give you tangible ways to dive deeper into your yoga business. If this sounds like something you're interested in, let's dive in. Head on over to patreon.com/MBOM yoga and sign up to get behind the scenes now. Once again, that's patreon.com/MBOM yoga to get all the exclusive behind the scenes content. I'll see you there. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the M.B.O.M podcast. This podcast is brought to you in partnership with OfferingTree. OfferingTree makes digital marketing fun, easy, and affordable. They are your one-stop shop for your website, scheduling software, membership management, payment, email newsletter, and more. Keep listening to hear how you can use OfferingTree to spend more time teaching and less time managing. Now, today on the podcast, I'm very excited to be joined by Julie McCoppen. Julie is a fellow Canadian, and she is also the co-founder and CEO of MOGA Moms. And she's an expert in holding space for yoga teachers and the moms they serve with their MOGA businesses. And I was really excited to chat with Julie because we dove deep into her background, why she first decided to get into yoga, what inspired her to become a yoga teacher, and then specifically why she got inspired to become a prenatal and postnatal yoga teacher. We also talk about what MOGA is and who they serve, and then we dive into niching. So if you've listened to the podcast for a while, then you know I'm a big fan of discovering your ideal student and discovering your niche. And we talk about how yoga teachers can make more money and stand out by niching, and then we also dive into the niche of new moms or expecting moms and talk a little bit about how you can get started with that niche if you are interested in that. So Julie shares a lot in this podcast episode, and regardless of if you ever want to teach a mom or a pregnant mom in your life, you can definitely get something out of this episode in terms of discovering who you love to teach and what your niche is. So I hope that you enjoy this episode as much as I did, and without further ado, here is Julie. Welcome to the podcast today, Julie. I'm really excited to have you here with me today.
I am so excited to be here, Amanda.
Yeah, I cannot wait for this conversation. I think you are the first person that I've had on the show that specializes in pre and postnatal. So I am really excited to dive into that niche and what that's all about. But I want to back up a little bit. Can you tell me a bit about your yoga story and how you first got into yoga?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think my very first yoga class I ever took. Have you heard of the program called Katimovic?
No, I haven't.
No. Okay. So it was a national youth volunteer service program that was running in Canada for many, many, many years. And it's kind of a crazy story. Essentially, it was funded by the government, and this program took 11 youths from all over the country and stuck them in a house together and then sent them all across Canada to volunteer and develop leadership and community service and all these amazing things. So I did that program when I was 18, and we would on the weekends and weeknights kind of do different cultural learning activities, leadership building, different things. And we, like me and 10 other youth, crammed into this like little dark basement carpeted room to do this thing called yoga that I had never heard about. So that was my first class ever. And I guess that just kind of planted the initial seed. And I wouldn't say I had like a very regular yoga practice until I was in my 20s. And yeah, the rest is history. I just fell in love with it.
Amazing. And what inspired you to start teaching?
I don't know that I could nail it down to like any one main inspiration. I think, I think my story is probably really common and relatable of just being like a super dedicated student, falling in love with the practice, and just feeling like the only really natural next step was to become a teacher. But I think dig a little deeper, I would say that really like each class I took, each teacher that taught me, like each moment that I had like kind of a revelation through yoga was all like in itself a mini inspiration that just continuously every class pushed me towards teaching.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that is something that I hear quite a bit is like, there was just something about it that each time you came back, it's like,
Mhm.
okay, I think I should teach this. Okay. I think I should teach this. Okay. I'm going to do a teacher training program. And I'm curious,
Mhm.
did you have kind of another career that you were working towards when you did your teacher training?
Yeah. So I am kind of like a serial entrepreneur. I mean, I shouldn't say it's not like I jump around to different things. It's always been in the same realm. But I was a doula. I still own it. I own a childbirth company where we offer doula services, postpartum doula services, birth, lactation educator, childbirth educator, all that stuff. So moms have really been like my world for quite a long time, probably about 10 years. So I was doing all that while I was taking my teacher training. And I'm sure, I mean, that's what brought me definitely to specialize in pre and postnatal is just kind of combining all that. I feel like every step I've taken um, in my life has really led me to this point. It's like I had like one specialization and then I'd kind of take this other training. And then there was like this way to combine them together and just like really naturally evolved.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting to hear. And I think that that's really amazing that you were a doula. Do you still practice doing doula services or is that something that you don't do anymore?
I am practicing saying no, Amanda, because I laugh because it's like kind of a joke that yeah, I have a really hard time saying no because I love it so much. I do love doula work, but MOGA, what we'll talk about in a little bit, is really I work pretty much full time in it. So it's just one of those things I have to kind of put on the back burner for right now. I have young kids. So we'll see. But I do still own the business, and there's another doula in my community that works within it. And I'm still really active in the birth community, really connected with like the midwives and the doula community as a whole. I would say probably my last client was maybe in January. And I think that was like my only one for the year. I was like, okay, setting some firm boundaries for myself.
Yeah, yeah, I feel you on that. That's actually been
Yeah.
like the personal work that I've been doing through this quarantine because I've just recognized just
Mhm.
some of the strategies I was using as boundary setting that are no longer possible when I am stuck at home. So saying no
Yeah.
has been a very important learning over the last couple of months and I mean years really, but it
I was
really
gonna say, like my whole life, I'm like, feel like I've been talking about saying no in counseling for like at least 6 years straight.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just come up in like different realms. Like I think it started with, oh, I need to say no to like social events and to things that I don't want to do. And then it was like, oh, okay, now I really need to say no in my
Mm.
career. Like that's really important.
I think it's hard, especially I think, most of the yoga teachers that I know are quite like passionate people. Like we like a lot of things. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I like to do a lot of things. So it's extra hard to say no when you just like genuinely feel passionate about like a realm of things. But I'm really fortunate that in MOGA, I get to still work with moms just through yoga teachers. So, and then, still involved in the local community and all that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so you were
Mhm.
working with moms and then you got your yoga teacher training. And did you know
Mhm.
about pre and postnatal training or pre and postnatal teaching when you became a yoga teacher? Or was that something you learned about after?
No, no, always knew about it. I mean, moms were my world. So I was constantly talking to moms. Even before I was a mom myself, I had been a doula. So knew so many people who had gone to pre and postnatal yoga. And when I was pregnant, I had gone to pre and postnatal yoga. So super familiar with it. But, and I think I probably just always knew that as soon as I, did my base training, that I would become a pre and postnatal yoga teacher. It was just such a natural evolution, like the easiest decision ever. So yeah, definitely knew about it.
Okay, gotcha. That definitely makes sense. And so then you became a yoga teacher, and did you start kind of weaving in pre and postnatal teaching into your doula services, or kind of how did your like journey
Mhm.
with yoga and moms kind of form?
Yeah, I mean, pretty immediately, I would say, even just as a yoga practitioner before I was even a teacher, I was already using principles of yoga in my services as a birth doula and a postpartum doula. Especially like birth is quite unique of an experience, and a lot of the tools that we practice in yoga are so applicable to birthing situations. So I just found myself naturally kind of weaving in those teachings anyways. And then pretty immediately after doing my 200-hour teacher training, became a prenatal and postpartum teacher, and just already had kind of I was already set up in that community. So it was a really easy transition to start offering those classes. So yeah, pretty immediately got started and just loved it. Like it just is really, I mean, I know I'm biased. Obviously, we teach people how to teach pre and postnatal. So it'd be weird if I thought those classes were awful, but I just find them like the most powerful class to teach, like just so energetic. I feel like your impact as a yoga teacher is just like really profound when you're working with such a like vulnerable yet powerful demographic. It's super special. At least to me, I found it really, really special.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely makes sense. I'm trained in prenatal and postnatal, and I've taught a little bit over the last couple of years, but it's definitely not something I specialize in. And but there is something like really amazing, and I haven't been pregnant yet, so I don't know what the experience is personally, but I have like really good friends who have had kids at this point, and when they talk about the experience of like growing a human, birthing a human, it just feels like a very spiritual experience to me in many ways. And so I feel like yoga is like a really good fit, like connecting with the breath, connecting with the body, being able to connect with your baby. It just feels like all moms should be doing yoga and doing these
Oh my
practices
gosh,
as
totally.
they're pregnant. And of course that's like the bias of a yoga teacher, because I kind of feel like everyone should be doing yoga in general, but I really feel like I see that connection with emerging moms and then new moms as well. Something I've heard is that in general there's not often, and I think maybe this is shifting, maybe you can tell me since you know more, but there's not like traditionally been that support for people afterwards. It's like, oh, you have this human now, like, oh, go take care of them. And a lot of new moms are like, I don't know how to take care of a baby. I've never had one before.
No, exactly. I think that's the beauty of like mom and baby classes is, well, for one, like, so we teach mom and baby classes at MOGA. And the reason we do that instead of just a regular just for moms postnatal class is because often moms are there with their new babies. Like they kind of, you have to bring your baby everywhere. And it can be a little bit isolating if they have to choose between, leaving their baby or doing yoga. So being able to like incorporate baby in yoga, it really creates a community that they so desperately need. It can be yeah, like the whole motherhood journey is like quite the experience. Anyone listening who is a mother will totally be able to know that. And I think, even if you don't have children, people who have children, people who have talked about the experience, it's unlike anything else in life. And it's like you go through this profound transformation and suddenly you don't have access to the communities that you had access to before. And that can be just a really, really hard shift. And I think, especially for people who already had a yoga practice, if you're just really connected to your yoga community, to your yoga practice, and then suddenly you get pregnant and you don't have as many options of practicing, of connecting to that same community, and then you go on and have a baby and you really don't have as many options, it can just be super lonely, which is not what we want for new moms. We really want to like surround them and hug them and mother them. And so that's where I think they can really get that in a postnatal class.
Yeah, absolutely. That definitely makes sense. And so I'm curious if you can tell me a little bit about MOGA. I know we've talked a little bit about it just kind of as we've been chatting, but tell me a little bit about, what you do, when you started it, and all of that good stuff.
So MOGA Moms, we have classes for moms around the world. So we have MOGA licensed yoga instructors teaching, I think, in 7 countries now, which we're super excited about, obviously.
Yeah, that's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, thanks. It's been a lot of hard work, but yeah. So, I mean, the reason I should say, like, it's not just like so that we can be like, yay, 7 countries, like number checked. It's because really every yoga instructor that we license and certify, we know that they have the power to impact so many moms in their community over the years. So we really started out as just teaching our own classes. And this was in Kelowna. And I joined the company a little bit later. So the founder was a single mom, and exactly what we're talking about, just really felt isolated from her community, didn't have a lot of people, and she just wanted connection. And the only, the what stuck out to her as a way to get connection was yoga. So she started teaching just mom and baby classes, and then it developed to prenatal. And then I came on, Teen came on. The longer that we kind of developed MOGA, we just saw that there was such a huge gap. We just couldn't meet the needs of all the moms that were coming to us. Yet we were hearing so much positive feedback from these moms about how it was impacting their lives. So we knew that we had like something special. We really wanted to kind of work to fill that gap, to just make it so that there's more access to pre and postnatal yoga. So the way we found to do that was to teach yoga teachers what we were doing. So we created comprehensive like prenatal, postnatal yoga teacher training programs. And instead of just educating them, we also licensed the yoga teachers to teach the classes that we were teaching and supported them. So we have, coaching calls, all that kind of stuff. I mean, this was 5 years ago. So over the years, we've just consistently added on to what we do. But I think, I could probably summarize all of that by just saying that we're really doing whatever we can to make sure that moms everywhere have access to amazing pre and postnatal yoga.
Amazing.
And then I think I didn't really touch on like who we serve. I guess, well, it's probably a little bit obvious, but we serve like what we think are the most amazing demographics of moms and yoga teachers.
Yeah, I love that. And so the idea is that, say, I wanted to become a registered pre and postnatal teacher through MOGA, I can go on, find a training, do that, and then I'm like a MOGA certified teacher. Is that how it works?
Yeah. So we leave the option. I mean, we don't force you to teach MOGA classes. We think they're pretty awesome. And if you do, we like list it on our website and all that stuff. So we have all these things in place that really support people teaching MOGA classes a little bit extra. But of course, we have all the knowledge, all like the curriculum covers everything you need to teach pre and postnatal yoga. So you could just take that. And if you already have like your own established brand, run your classes under that. But I think we added in that like kind of licensing component because I'm sure like you see this all the time running a business focused podcast, is that so many times teachers like get all the knowledge of how to teach yoga, but they don't have the business and marketing knowledge to make it into a career and make it sustainable. So we kind of added that component of like, we're going to give you a little bit of a business in a box, and we're going to support you to make sure that you can reach more moms. Because if we just train you and leave you and don't really give you any of that additional business and marketing support, like we're not going to accomplish our mission of reaching more moms. So that's exactly how it works. People join our training. Most often than not, they choose to stay as a licensee and teach MOGA classes. And we give them kind of everything they need to do that, including like, the waivers and all those kind of little details that you don't necessarily think about, as well as like the business and marketing training and materials.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that's definitely something that I've found through my years of doing this, is that most yoga teachers don't decide to become yoga teachers because they're excited about running a business. They're excited about sharing the teachings and practices of yoga. And, the business component is something that's just necessary to be successful with that. So,
yeah, totally. I mean, like I wouldn't recommend getting into yoga for the money. I just think that doesn't seem to be a common motivator. But often we need to think about that if we want to make it sustainable. And our goal would just be nothing if we didn't help our yoga instructors who certify with us become sustainable, because then we just wouldn't get out there to the moms.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I find really interesting about what you're doing is the niche that you've created. And this is something that, is talked about quite a bit, is the importance of niching. And I actually just had a conversation with another yoga teacher before this, and we were talking about how, if you're trying to serve everyone, you're kind of not serving anyone, because people don't really know if you serve them. And I love the niche that you've created and how you're teaching yoga teachers to kind of build this same niche. So I'd love to talk about niching in general, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on why having a niche is important.
Oh, I would love to talk about this. This is something that I'm super passionate about. It's funny that you say that, because I literally was, thinking about what we're going to talk about and writing notes. And I wrote down, like, if you try to be everything to everyone, you like more often than not become nothing to anyone. So it's like pretty much verbatim what the other yoga instructor said. So that's really interesting. It's niching, I think, it just can help you do a few things. I think I could probably talk about this for hours, but I think I can probably narrow it down to, 3 things that it really helps you do, and that are a benefit and a reason that you should look into finding your niche. One is to stand out in your community. A second is to earn a higher income so that you can, not so that you can, be filthy rich and not have to work, but so that you can really build a sustainable career so that you can keep doing what you love. And then 3 is really, it helps you focus your intention on teaching something super specific that you feel extra passionate about. So those 3 things together increase your likelihood of having a more longer lasting and fulfilling yoga career. And that's what I talk about all the time, of why you should niche. Stand out in your community, earn a little bit more, and really do something that you really, really love.
Yeah, for sure. I love those points. And I want to dive into those a little bit, and maybe just counter it with maybe, the average yoga teacher who's maybe not the average yoga teacher, but maybe a yoga teacher who maybe they're new and they're teaching a lot of classes, and they're like, well, I'm not going to stand out in the community if I'm just teaching moms. What would you say to that?
I would say that that's not necessarily true. I would say, I think, maybe if it's just one class a week, just teaching moms, yeah, maybe you wouldn't stand out. But I think it's a misconception. Honestly, people think that like the larger your market is, like the more potential, like you just like, I don't want to limit myself to just these people. But when you limit yourself to just these people, you wind up being a little different, and that stands out. So, let's take that, new yoga teacher. Let's say she graduates with like 200 in a year. Let's say her community like pumps out 200 new yoga teachers. It's pretty likely that like 99% of those teachers who are going to go on to teach are going to teach like, let's say like a hatha vinyasa class. At least that's what we see in our community. And probably like only, let's see, she stands out and she's that 1% that does something different. That's noticeable. That's noticeable to the studios that she's going to apply to. And that's noticeable to the people in her community that are serving that same demographic. So this is one way that I love niching, is it really helps with network opportunities. So like if you're a hatha yoga teacher, like your network opportunities are kind of everyone, which is like super overwhelming. And also all the other yoga teachers have those same network opportunities. So it doesn't really stand out. But let's take like a prenatal yoga teacher. You can pretty much confidently say who in your community comes in contact with your demographic. And then you have a really specific group of people that all can kind of refer to each other. So it really helps. I think what I'm kind of getting at there is marketing. Like it just really helps your marketing efforts because you have a clear demographic, and marketing is the thing that typically brings people to your classes. And even if that's just like, if you're thinking of like a more traditional marketing, like word of mouth, if you are again teaching, let's say a hatha or vinyasa class, the people that you're teaching, they're like a really wide range demographic, and they're likely not in contact with each other all the time because they're just like varied groups. Like you might have a 65-year-old male who is retired, or you might have like an 18-year-old university student coming to the same class. Whereas when you niche, you're really reaching a group of people who all talk to each other. They go to like the same places, they get referrals from the same people, they are taking the same, let's take prenatal, like they're taking the same prenatal class. It really just makes it a lot easier to fill up your class. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And I think too, I was just thinking too about kind of like, what makes you unique and what you're known for. And I think that like word of mouth marketing is some of the best marketing you can get when somebody can refer you. And I think that if we just think about, say, a friend is like, oh, I'm looking for a yoga teacher to, teach a class for me and my friends. Do you know of somebody? I mean, I know of lots of people, right? So I'm going to have to say like, oh, well, what type of style do you want? Oh, just, like at all levels flow. Okay, well, maybe you've narrowed it down a little bit. I've cut out, the yin and restorative teachers I know, but I still know a lot of people who teach that. Versus if somebody's like, hey, I'm getting a group of like my pregnant mom friends together or
Yeah.
my mom friends together. Do you know of somebody who works with like moms and babies or pregnant moms? I mean, that list is a lot shorter for me. Maybe you're different, obviously, because you probably know a ton of people in that realm. But I think like the average person is probably like, oh, yeah, I've got like my go-to prenatal teacher. Like there's the prenatal teacher that's well known in my community. And I think that if you can do something, not necessarily it doesn't have to be prenatal, postnatal. If you're like, I'm not into moms, I don't like
Totally.
babies, it doesn't have to be that, but it's like,
No.
what do you want to be known for in your
Yeah.
community? So when somebody says like, hey, I need a yoga teacher that does X, you're that teacher.
Exactly. I think you become, what you're touching on is like you become so much more memorable because, the average yoga student, they are just getting so many messages all the time. I don't mean like DMs, but like just messaging around the community, let's say flyers or on social media, ads popping up for yoga classes. They are getting like from the, like a, hatha or vinyasa yoga teacher, they're getting those messages all the time. They have so many options. But when it's a prenatal student or another niche, let's say like a chair yoga student or beginner yoga student, it's something a little bit more specific, you're going to really stand out to them. You're going to be a lot more memorable. So, and totally, it does not have to be prenatal or postnatal. Not everyone is meant to be a pre or postnatal yoga teacher. But there's so many amazing niches out there. And it's just like such a simple thing that you can do to really just stand apart from the crowd.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree with that. And so to the next point that you said about money. So again, I'm going to go
Yeah.
back to this yoga teacher and say, okay, I'm teaching at 3 different studios. I've got 25 different classes a week. I'm in touch with
Mm-hmm.
all these different students. Like, how am
Mm-hmm.
I going to make more money if all I focus on is one thing?
Yeah, so good. I like this person. I want to talk to them. For example. I'm sure there's tons of people listening who are this person who totally, and I get it. I've been there. We were there when we first started out. And um, I'd say a few things. So one, specialty classes are just of a higher value. So they tend to go for a higher price. At least in most yoga studios that we've ever come across, they also tend to be in series. So you get everything kind of up front instead of, and it's like a consistent, what you're going to get as opposed to just a drop in. And if, especially if you're being paid like per head, you're not really sure if attendance is low. I think the second thing, so first would be, just a higher value, a higher price tag on the classes. The second thing would be, one of the key things to earning more income as a yoga teacher is you have to fill your classes. Even if you have, a standard rate at a yoga studio, you still want to be the person filling your classes because you have a little bit more like wiggle room when it comes to negotiating or it comes to like adding a second class. If you're more in demand, you tend to be worth a higher rate. And that is definitely helped by niching. You are really much more able to fill your classes when you've niched because you have, again, coming back to marketing, you just have really clear messages. All your marketing efforts can be more centralized. You have more network opportunities. You have more referral opportunities. All those things are going to help you really fill your classes and you have less competition. So it's, being a big fish in a small pond versus a small fish in a big pond. You're more likely to fill those classes. And then again, like I guess, marketing specifically is so effective when you have a specific target market. Amanda, if you didn't niche and you had this podcast as like mastering the business of things, like maybe maybe like 1 week you talked about yoga and like the next week you talked about like photography, and like you wouldn't be able to build a loyal audience or fans. So like although you're narrowing your audience, you're finding your people. You're getting people who are going to become fans of yours, who are going to become an audience of yours, as opposed to like if you were that like mastering the business of things, people are going to like tune in 1 week and then the next week it's not for them and they're going to tune out and you're not really able to build that brand. So I think those three things really together, being able to fill your classes, being able to build a brand, better marketing, and just the fact that specialty classes are a higher value, you just really earn a higher income. I think like our MOGA instructors, I mean, we talk about money. I think this, as I should maybe say this, is that I know, and you talk about money on the podcast, but it is a little bit of like a taboo subject sometimes in the yoga world of focusing on money as like not a great thing to focus on, not something that yoga teachers should focus on. But again, bringing that back to like, you're not going to be able to be sustainable if you don't think about these kinds of logistics things. So you really do want to be focusing on how much your offerings are going to make you. And typically, I can't speak for other niches. Obviously, this is our niche. Our yoga instructors, I'm going to throw some numbers out there, tend to make, like we've pulled our instructors many, many times, and it's about like $100 per class. Whereas before, a lot of them were making like $35 per class. So we do see like quite a significant increase. So even if like everything else I'm saying, you're like, nah, I don't believe it, like marketing and like filling classes, whatever, like the statistics really do support it that you tend to make more when you niche.
Yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense to me. And specifically, like when I relate that back to like mastering the business of things, like I can't imagine if I was trying to like, I mean, that just seems crazy, but like pitch
Yeah,
guests or pitch sponsors, like who am
totally.
I going to have sponsoring the show? If they're like,
Yeah.
well, who's listening? And I'm like, oh, well, sometimes there's yoga teachers listening and sometimes there's like mechanics listening. And,
Yeah.
sometimes I have
Yeah.
teenagers listening and then sometimes I have moms listening. Like that would just be crazy.
Yeah, it's just not possible. Like you can't, but it's so funny because we're just so used to like, I think it's a newer concept for a lot of beginner yoga teachers to like get uber specific on who their people are. But I just think, one exercise we take our instructors through in our program is really defining their like ICA, like their ideal customer avatar. Like, what does that person look like? Like, where are they? What kind of, professionals are they coming in contact with? Who are their friends? Really getting super specific, like even visualizing, like picture that person, like who are they? I want you to like see what they look like and try to do that for like, all levels. Vinyasa class, like it's going to be like you cannot picture a single person. So it really helps when you get super clear. Your messaging it becomes so much more simple. Marketing becomes more simple. Word of mouth becomes more simple. All those things. It's I think people are shocked. I think so many yoga teachers just have never even thought about who they serve, like who their ideal client is.
Yeah, for sure. I just did the business of yoga section for a 300-hour training just this past spring. And it was a lot of emerging teachers because the way that the school that I taught through does it is that they can do their 200-hour and then their 300-hour back to back. So they actually graduate as a 500-hour. So a good chunk of them had never taught before. And I got them we did a lot of work on their ICA, and then I got them into a meditation, and I was trying to get them to visualize it. And for a lot of them, it was really hard. And they're like, I don't know who's going to show up to my classes. And I was like, let go of, not knowing who's going to show up and think about who you want to show up. Like, what do you like doing? What do you want to teach? And who do you want to show up to your classes? And then they were like, oh, well, I really like, the outdoors, for example. So I would really like people who have similar interests of me. And I'm like, yes, good. Now imagine what that person looks like. And I think that we really just don't do a lot of this work. I mean, I did this back in business school, but I never did it in yoga teacher training. It wasn't something that I came out of training thinking about. I just figured, I'll get a job in a studio, and I didn't even know how much I'd get paid at that point. And then I found out that, and I was like, started doing some quick numbers and was like, oh crap, I'm going to have to teach like 30 of these classes a week to make enough money to like, even like not to thrive, like just to survive. And then I was like, well, crap, that seems like a lot. And that really kind of led me down the path of learning more about this and bringing in the things that I already knew from the business side. Because I mean, if you want to teach 30 classes a week and you want to teach to everyone, or you don't want to teach full time, that's fine. Like, I'm not here to tell you otherwise. But I think, what you're saying about being a big fish in a small pond and being able to charge more, like that's the stuff that gives us space in our business. That's the stuff that gives us more abundance in our business. That's like when you can walk in the grocery store and be able to pick out your ideal client, and you're like, oh, that's somebody that I want to invite to my yoga class. Like, for pregnant moms is a great one because they're pregnant. They're visually pregnant. You're like,
yeah, I mean, I should clarify. I highly don't recommend going up to anyone you think it has like a little belly and asking them.
Oh yes, 100%.
That'll get you in trouble. But yeah, totally. They're a lot easier to identify for sure.
I mean, I look pregnant after I eat a burger. So yes, please don't do that. I was thinking more of the like, when moms hit that like, very visually pregnant, like you can visualize them.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think, I agree with everything you're saying. And I think another point there, one thing we address in our program, and I know like you've addressed in the podcast before, and a lot of yoga teachers are talking about now as we are like 2020, is kind of that like money mindset. Like people are just so, they can get really like self-limiting beliefs about money. But it's important to remember that when you are able to earn a little bit higher of an income from yoga, you have more time in your life. You have more energy. You're not like as burnt out. You can do more for your community, really. I think so many yoga teachers think that they're just like servicing their community by like working themselves to the bone, offering free classes wherever they can, when they might be better serving their community by taking care of themselves first. And that includes financially, and then giving back. Like our MOGA instructors do like prenatal yoga classes for charities in their community. They do so much. There are so many ways that you can give back that don't involve you like working yourself into burnout.
Yeah, 100%. And that burnout is, I mean, it's real for a lot of yoga teachers, and something that is really important to me with the money side of things is very much thinking about the exchange, but then also thinking about how you can continue to serve your clients. Because I think that, I mean, if we use like say prenatal yoga, for example, like, I mean, if your teachers or you, for example, was charging, I don't know, a really low rate or offering your services for free, or like, oh, this person's expecting a baby, like I should just invite them to come to class or something like that. I mean, how are you going to continue teaching? Like at some point, your cup is going to be empty because you're not bringing anything in.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's not a long-term plan for sure. And I mean, you're going to reach more people if you make a long-term plan, if you're in it for like the sustainability. And I mean, especially we work a lot with this with our instructors because we want them to reach as many moms as possible. And it's kind of important to cover some of these hurdles that we see in yoga teachers a lot first before just getting out there and starting to teach and trying to teach anywhere, like taking anything and at whatever cost. Like in the long run, it doesn't seem to serve many people.
Absolutely. That's very true. I am so excited to welcome back OfferingTree as our sponsor. You've heard me talk about them in the past, and many of you are already among their growing community of happy OfferingTree users. With everything that goes into running your yoga business, OfferingTree created a single platform that can solve all your marketing and time management headaches. With a single account, you can create a website in minutes, set up a newsletter, create a blog, schedule classes, and take payment. The great part is that all of OfferingTree's features work seamlessly together, so you don't need to pay for and manage 5 different services. Instead, you get it all in one easy, affordable package. And now, the big news. OfferingTree makes it easy for you to manage memberships, annual, semi-annual, tiered offerings. Regardless of types of memberships you offer, you can create them in OfferingTree with the ease of use OfferingTree is becoming famous for. This amazing platform was built by yogis, so you know they get it. OfferingTree also provides helpful tutorials and webinars to keep you growing as a teacher. It's part of their mission as a public benefit corporation. I love their product and their company. They're providing special pricing for M.B.O.M listeners. So if you want to spend more time teaching and less time managing your digital presence, then check them out at offeringtree.com/MBOM. Again, that's offeringtree.com/MBOM. All right, now back to the episode. And so I'm curious a little bit if you can talk a little bit more about like the niche that you work in specifically. So if somebody is listening and they are like, I am really interested in the niche of moms, expecting moms or new moms or repeating moms in general. Let's just say that.
Moms.
Moms. Yeah. How, obviously MOGA is a great resource, but say they're just looking to get started or dip their toes in this, what are some ways that they could start reaching moms, start teaching moms, that type of thing?
I think, we just wrapped up, actually, we just did a challenge called Moms Deserve Better Yoga Teachers. And we did like this little mini course, because one thing I haven't really touched on is I really do think there's something to be said about a little bit of more pre and postnatal knowledge being weaved into all teacher trainings. The stat that's out there is that 85% of women will have a baby in their lifetime. And with about, 70% of yoga practitioners being women, like that's a large portion that even if you never want to teach moms, you're going to wind up teaching a mom, whether you want to or not. If you're teaching like an all levels class, unless you're in like, you're teaching maybe like yoga for seniors or something listening, you might not, but you're going to wind up touching moms as a yoga teacher. So we do think it's important that you get like a little bit of base knowledge. Now we just wrapped up that training, but we will have another one coming out soon, and it's totally free. And like, you don't have to take our training at all. It's just a cool thing. So you could stay in touch with me through MOGA Moms if that's something that you're interested in. But I think, barring that, just like some good old fashioned research, I think, first step, identifying like what's important to you in a program, because there's tons of amazing pre and postnatal yoga teacher trainings out there. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased and I love what we've put together, but we're not the only one. And there's lots and lots of good ones. More often than not, I think most of the curriculums are very, very similar. Like there is just like a set list of things you need to know to teach pre and postnatal yoga. So we don't see like a ton of variation between programs, but how to identify which one is for you might come down more to the questions like, do I want in person or do I want online? I want it to be at my own pace? What extras are included? Is there ongoing support? So I would say the first step is really just kind of getting the answers to those questions to identify what training is for you. Consuming books. There's some amazing books out there about pre and postnatal yoga. So if you're just looking to like dip your toe in, I would say there's lots of free content out there that you can start to dip your toe. We have free Facebook Lives every Thursday on our Facebook page for yoga instructors, where we cover some of these topics that are related to teaching and teaching pre and postnatal. So you could come join us and, start to dip your toe. And then when you get to that point that you're ready to do a training, just look for what's important to you, find the program that matches. And then really the second step is just to do it. I think, know that the investment will come back to you tenfold because you will niche, and because of all the reasons that we talked about, that niching can help your business, help you stand out, help you make more money. And so don't just find a training and stop there. Just do it. Just take a little leap of faith, especially if you're, in your heart that this is these are your people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you touched on something really important kind of at the beginning of that, around how as yoga teachers, like most of us will come in contact with, either a pregnant mom or a mom who has recently given birth. And this was something that I quickly realized as a teacher. And one of the I think it was actually the first training that I took after my 200 hour, because the first time a pregnant mom, a pretty pregnant mom, obviously pregnant mom, walks in your room and she's got that cute little waddle going on and the big old belly. And she's like, oh, just so you know, I'm pregnant. So I'll just be back in the corner. And I'm like, oh my God, there's a baby in there. I don't want to be responsible for anything going wrong. That's terrifying. And so I was like, I got to get trained on this. And then it was really great because when I took my 300 hour last year in Vancouver, we actually did a section on prenatal, and it was so nice to have the refresher, because I hadn't, taught or done a training in prenatal for, I guess, 5 years at that point. And just, it was really positioned in the way of there's ways to dive deeper with this. If you do want to niche in it, there's more specific trainings you can take to learn more about this. But just like you said, the reality is at some point, a pregnant mom is probably going to walk through your class. If she's coming to, in general, an all levels yoga class, she probably has a practice. She probably knows what to do, but she might not, because you're the yoga teacher.
Totally.
And it's kind of your responsibility to know what somebody, what to recommend somebody when they come in and they're like, hey, so I've got this baby, what do I do? You're like, I don't know.
I would say, I would actually say one of the things we heard during this challenge that we just ran was, well, shouldn't they, they just listen to their bodies and they'll just know how to adjust. And then I'm like, no, that's just, their bodies are changing so rapidly. And there isn't really this guidance. I think this is something a lot of prenatal women find, is there isn't this guidance about getting to know that new body and, what they can do with it and what they can't do with it. They're just trying to go week by week and learning as they go and still trying to work and do all these things. There isn't, it's kind of I think, expecting somebody who's brand new, never done yoga, to like come to a vinyasa, like advanced vinyasa class and be like, well, you just like, just listen to your body. You're going to know what to do. Like, no, they're not. They need you to teach them. And, I think so many trainings cover things like, how to adjust for knee injuries or for back injuries. We have some of these things covered in basic trainings, and moms, I think, are left out a little bit. I mean, not to point any fingers at anyone. It's just kind of one of those things that we're learning about as we go. But as yoga changes, we see so many more moms coming to yoga classes and so many more yoga teachers like having no idea what to do with them. So they wind up just kind of like leaving them alone. Like it's kind of this like fear thing where it's like, okay, perfect. She's like back in the corner and I'm just going to like kind of pretend she doesn't exist, which we get. Like it's super intimidating. But there are some basics that you can learn if you're not even interested in niching it. There's some basics that you can learn that will just really help you be a more confident yoga teacher. And you can make like such a big difference in that woman's life just by including her. Does that make sense? I got a little rambly there.
No, 100%. I definitely followed what you were saying. And
okay, good.
And I'm curious if you have any, top business lessons that you want to share with listeners today based on your career and what you've learned through your journey.
Oh, Lordy, Amanda. Like I said, this has been like a huge, I have run a few businesses. And definitely this last year with MOGA, we've seen a lot of growth, and it's been one of the most amazing, but one of the most challenging years. I think, coming back to niching, that would be one of the like biggest things is get really clear on who you serve and why. And always come back to that. So it's not just like you do this little worksheet and you're like, okay, now I know, cross reference that to like what you're posting on social media or the people that you're talking with to network. Like you wouldn't, reach out to somebody who's like in a totally different field if you're trying to interview somebody on the, going back to the business of mastering the business of things. You wouldn't probably interview like a photographer on that. So being really clear about who you network with, who you collaborate with, what you're posting, all that comes back to who you're really trying to reach. So being intentional in that, I think, is one of the biggest lessons I've learned. Just keep moving forward. Even if you don't feel like it, just keep doing it. And oh gosh, I would say for yoga teachers, especially, be confident. Like know that there are people out there who want your message. This is how I like to think of marketing is you're not trying to convince people who are not your people that they need what you have to offer. You're just trying to show up for the people who are your people and who maybe don't even know that they want what you have to offer, but they do. So, I think that kind of helps some yoga teachers shift their mindset from thinking like marketing can be really icky to being like, no, like I'm not trying to change what I offer to fit other people. And I'm not trying to change other people to fit what I offer. I'm just getting out there in front of people to show them how I can help them. And knowing that when you really show up for people who are looking for what you have to offer, that's going to convert, that's going to translate into business. So just, don't be afraid to talk about what you offer, be confident about it because there are people who want what you have.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And this has been a fabulous conversation, Julie. It's been so fun getting to chat with you.
Oh, you too, Amanda. I've loved it. You've made this so much easier. I'll tell everyone that I was maybe a touch nervous before we started recording. Like deep breathing before we got on. My husband's like, you maybe should not drink your 6th coffee. And I'm like, it's fine.
Oh, that's so funny. No, you did amazing. And it was fabulous to chat with you. If people want to learn more about you, what you offer, maybe get in touch for a training, where can they go to find all of that?
Yeah. So our website is called mogamoms.com. Super easy to remember. And I would say, we open our programs for enrollment usually every few months. But if you go on our website and grab one of our freebies, we have like a free prenatal yoga sequence on there. We have some like little mini trainings that you can sign up for. If you grab any one of those, you'll be added to our email list. And that's probably the best way to make sure you get like any updates or stay in touch. And of course, once you're on the website, you can send us a message. Like if you want to chat right away and you don't want to wait for like an email update, just send us a message. And I'm usually the person that responds to those. So I would love to chat with anyone who has interest in pre and postnatal yoga.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. This has been an awesome conversation, and I'm so grateful that we got to chat.
Yeah, me too. It was really, really nice. Thank you, Amanda.
Hey friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. I just wanted to pop in and give a huge thank you to our sponsor, OfferingTree. To start teaching more and managing less, head on over to OfferingTree.com/MBOM to get an exclusive discount. And don't forget to check out the show notes and learn more about Julie McCoppen. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next week. Namaste. Thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of the podcast. To find links, notes, resources, and everything mentioned in today and all episodes of the show, you can head on over to MBOMyoga.com. You can find the podcast and myself on Facebook and social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And I would love for you to join the private Facebook community, Yoga Business Badasses. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please make sure you reach out to me at info@mbomyoga.com. And last of all, if you enjoyed this episode of the show, please make sure you hit subscribe and leave a review for the podcast. It would mean the world. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.